Check, check. Check one, check two.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic podcast. I'm really excited to have my guest on today. Today we're going to be talking about, our true history to what we know, and what we're finding out about our real history. And the guest I have with me today is Michelle Gibson. You might have saw the interview that I did with her with Chad from Open Your Reality. Her website is piercingtheveilofillusion.com. I'm just going to read you the small bio that's on her YouTube channel. She says, "I'm convinced that if we knew our true history, there would be no mysteries in history. I was first fascinated by megaliths, and life's journey has led me to uncovering the key to truth about ancient advanced civilization that built the Earth's infrastructure, from ancient to modern, and cataclysmic events which destroyed civilization and ushered in a new world by those behind which has taken place here for the purposes of power and control. I found a star tetrahedron on the North American continent. By connecting the dots in major cities, extended the lines out. Then I wrote down the cities and lined up primarily in circular and linear fashion and got an amazing tour of the world of places I had never heard of with remarkable similarities across countries." Wow, that's amazing. And I'd like to give her a big warm welcome to the show. Michelle, thanks so much for coming on my show for the first time. How are you?
I'm great, and thank you for inviting me, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, some of my fans might have not saw our interview with Chad, and I know you probably told this before, but like, what made you get into all this? Like, what made you start questioning your reality? And like, did you have like an awakening point or something like that?
I did, but since I was a kid, I've been interested in hidden history, even though I didn't really know it. I grew up outside of Washington, D.C., and I have memories of things that I noticed as I was growing up that I kind of filed in the back of my mind and I had questions about. And the house I lived in from 1973 until the time I left home at the age of 19 when I joined the Army. So that would have been like in 1982. I grew up next to a golf course. And I'm sure I was on top of a flat top pyramid. We had the flattest lot on this, what was called Lindley Terrace, which was like a boomerang shape. And as you went down the street from where we lived, it got really steep, and then it went on down. And then, thinking back on the pathway that I took to walk to high school, it was an earthwork. It just went continuously. So I grew up surrounded by this. But I didn't start waking up to a lot of this information until I was about 2007. And that was really the beginning of my waking up to all of this. But I was well prepared by the time I got to the point where I started getting the stream of information and that I'm sharing now. But I didn't become conscious of it until about 2013, 2014, in terms of starting to put things together and starting to see what was there. So it's like, that's why I call my website Piercing the Veil of Illusion. It was like the veil started to come down and I'm like, am I the only one seeing this? And I was.
Yeah, I just want to welcome my friend Ken to the podcast. You guys know Ken. Ken's from the We Are One podcast. He was a tad bit late, but like, I'm so glad to have you, Ken. And what did you first start to notice? Because I know you uncovered like something. You said this goes back to like Lemuria and Mu, but there's been like, it sounds like there's been resets over and over again, and then there's like hidden traces of this in the history. Like for example, you did a tour of Pittsburgh here where I live, and you showed that all the old infrastructures, and I guess this infrastructure is hidden all throughout time, and then somehow the mud floods tie into this. Sorry, I know that's like a big overview of kind of what you do, but like I just, that's kind of what I've been able to piece together by watching your interviews and then interviewing the first time. Is that correct? Or
so basically my overall hypothesis or working hypothesis is that there was a civilization that went back to ancient Lemuria. And that was the same civilization as Atlantis. And that this ancient advanced civilization, we were highly advanced, we were much larger, higher consciousness, all working together, built the world's infrastructure, and that there was one massive cataclysmic event or a series of them. And I'm kind of starting to whittle down a little bit more into kind of what I think might have happened. And then the reset of history was the people that we would call the controllers or the cabal. You know, you thought of me when you had an opening come up on 9/11, and you know,
Yeah.
we didn't know September 11th of 2001 that it could be possible that it was an inside job. Right? I didn't. I mean, it was like one of the last things my husband saw before he died, and he was retired Army, and he was just devastated.
Is that the conclusion both you and your husband came to, though? Do you feel like
no.
it was?
Oh, no. At that time, no. We were like everybody else, you know, shell-shocked and, oh my God. And, you know, that's when they brought in the Patriot Act and started taking away more freedoms. I was in the airport right after that happened, and I had a Kiwanis pin that meant a lot to me because I was highly involved in club administration, and I was the Kiwanis Club president for a long time. So this was special to me, and I dropped. Something happened to the pin, and I went to security to ask for my little pin, and the lady was really hostile. And I'm like, all right. And so I get on the plane, and right before the plane left, she brought me the little pin. I can't remember. I might have been on a jacket or something that I left behind. I'm not really sure. But that was how it was right after 9/11. And, again, at the time, it's like, we believed it. And then as time goes on, and I wasn't awake then, I was starting to wake up, but I wasn't. That's not what woke me up. It was really around the Mayan calendar that I started paying attention to some things, and that was part of it. So I was waking up more between 2007 and 2012 than I was in 2001. And for a lot of people I've talked to, 2001 was what did it, when they started questioning. But then you watch documentaries like Loose Change for people that might have seen it. That kind of.
And you just watched that the other day, right?
Yeah, I just started watching it.
Yes, so that kind of deconstructs a narrative and raises questions.
Can I ask you guys a question? What is it about that documentary? It seems like a lot of people are watching that documentary in particular. Like, what does it say? If you guys, whoever wants to talk,
I think it was one of the first ones that called out the hoax. It's been several years since I've seen it.
Yeah,
I think the authenticity of the way that it's describing the action. It's not like a professional host trying to formulate a narrative. The guy's just posing a bunch of questions in a way that you can tell the emotion is not attached to a narrative, if that makes sense. Like he's just talking like we're talking right now, and he's like this and this and this and this and this, and bringing up things to talk about, and that's kind of what I took from it. I watched some of it yesterday, day before.
So he's just like presenting facts, or not facts. He's presenting situations that say this was curious about it.
Collaborating, I believe, is what he's collaborated some data, and he's collaborated, some of the video. And I want to say when did it come out, Michelle? I don't even know what. It was 2017. I want to say. I'm not sure.
It's been a while. It's been years since I've seen it, and I'm not even sure how I heard about it. But it was very well done.
Yeah.
And, since then, with more people waking up, with more information being available on social media, more people asking questions, I even bring that up because the same people that were behind that are behind what's taken place here.
That's what I mean. Who is this? Like, is it like a global? I'm sorry. I mean, I'm like so curious to find out who exactly this is. Like, and I know we'll probably never find out, right? Or, I mean, like, because we thought the Bushes and.
Yeah,
sorry,
we know exactly who they are. The Bushes are part of it. You hear about the 13 Illuminati bloodline families are part of it. Secret societies, the highest level of like Freemasons. Especially 33rd degree, and there's probably levels above that. You've got the Vatican in there. You've got.
What about the alphabet agencies? Do you think they're in it as well? Like FBI, CIA?
Oh, sure. Yeah, they're all arms of it. the CIA, the FBI, our governments, the British Crown.
You want to, Michelle? Do you want to tell people who you think Barbara Bush was?
Aleister Crowley. I'll stand by
what?
that.
Wait, what? You think Barbara Bush was Aleister Crowley? How is that?
Absolutely.
That's amazing. I got to hear this. This is
Okay,
amazing.
well, hang on just a second. I'm gonna.
Have you made the connection between Big Mike being another first lady?
Absolutely.
I'll let you keep speaking, but when you said that, I was like, she ain't the first lady then.
Yeah. Let me hang on just a second. Let me pull up something here.
This is why I'm here, Rob. I'm here to pour gasoline all over this fire and just blow the whole thing up.
Yeah, we got to tread lightly. You got to watch what we say because like YouTube could take the video down. I can always put it on Rumble, but I'd like to try to keep it up on YouTube. I don't know if we said enough to get it taken down already, but like I don't know. I don't know if we can use how to use code words, but I just it is 9/11, so like we might as well try to be free Americans and let the cards out on the table and whatever happens. I
think we'll be fine. We're not saying anything that's we didn't make none of this stuff up. We're not slandering anything. We're repeating, if anything.
Yeah.
Michelle's having some loop trouble, it looks like. Her StreamYard, but
no.
Oh, they kicked her off already. Damn. That's why I had her say.
Let me oh, there she is. She's back. Let me see. Let me get rid of her other one so it doesn't like loop and get feedback into the microphone.
Michelle, what did you do? Did you do that or they do that?
No, I did that. I accidentally pressed leave studio.
It would have been better if they did it.
So I wanted to pull something up and we can look at it quickly. And honestly, guys, I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now. And I think their day is almost over. And, I'm not too worried about that. It's always a possibility, but the fact that I haven't.
Can I tell you something, Michelle? I have a friend who's a space psychic, and she told me last night that she feels like something big's going to happen. She feels like the whole political thing's going to fall, and like something big's happening soon. She had me announce that last night on my show. I announced. I mean, I don't know. She doesn't know what, but she feels like something is looming.
I believe that. I truly believe that, and I do not believe these evil beings are going to get away with what they've done. But let me hit present. I accidentally hit leave studio, and I didn't mean to do that. And I've got some other things to share that we can go into. Because I want to talk about the.
This is so interesting so far.
Michelle, while you're saying that, can I just I want to thank Rob for inviting me. And I was telling him, I asked him, why did you invite me on this one when he asked me to join? I said, that's crazy because literally this morning when he asked, or last night when he asked, I was asleep. Like a day ago, I was like, I need to talk to Michelle because there's very few people that I think have the discernment that you do. And it's refreshing to have another point of view. We're all experiencing something on a different perspective. And I was going to talk to you anyway. And I was like, out of the blue, Rob just texted me and I couldn't believe it. I was like, that's crazy. Like, I mean, it's synchronistic, but just awesome. I
think you guys are right in line with each other with your theories and stuff. So that's why I wanted you to, come on, Ken. Like, I knew you would mesh well with Michelle, I figured. Because what I saw you guys did in the first interview too. So it wasn't like, it was.
So I'm having trouble now. I'm having trouble sharing my screen, so I don't know what that's about.
You should hit present, then screen, then entire screen.
I know it's. I'm trying to.
Oh,
I had trouble logging in too. To be honest, it took me at least 4 minutes of just a little circling the website to log in.
I don't know what's up with StreamYard. Last night during my stream, I did a 3.5-hour stream, and it kicked me off at like 3.5 hours. Like it just like something took complete control of my computer. And just crashed me. It completely crashed me. Oh, you're good. You're on now. Hold on, I'm gonna add it. Okay. It takes a while for me to add it too because my computer's slow. But I mean, you think this is the AOL days? You know what I mean? Like, so I hit add and it's not adding. I don't know. Oh, there we go. Yeah, we're in the AOL. This is going back. We are back in 2001, guys. You guys have your AOL chat boxes open. You guys remember those back in the day? The AOL chat.
My instant messenger screen name is KVLA, so you can just email me at that one. Michelle, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Yep.
Yeah.
Can you see the resemblance?
Wow. So she might be a reincarnated version of Aleister Crowley.
No, I think she is Aleister
it's
Crowley.
transgender, Rob.
I think she is Aleister Crowley.
Oh my God. That's insane.
But Michelle, I mean, I guess some people who are not making that connection can say the seed would literally run right through that. Obviously, George Bush, her partner, would have been the head of the CIA, big government ties before he became president. Then he becomes president, and she becomes the first lady. Then there's many pictures of Obama with George Bush and the family, right? And then now you have another one potentially sitting there in the White House as well as it was in the White House. So that whole thing just runs deep.
It absolutely runs deep. You can look up Emmanuel Macron's so-called wife, the former Prime Minister of New Zealand, and you see these pictures with these dresses with a little extra added. This inversion is everywhere, and that's one of the many reasons I think this ceremonial black magic occult Aleister Crowley is behind what's taken place here. And it's documented that he was connected with the Philadelphia experiment, which is one of the things that I'm looking at. I've looked at very seriously as having been involved in a hijack of the timeline.
So
and that's connected to Montauk.
What do you believe happened with the Philadelphia experiment in layman's terms, or in theoretical terms? We know that it was a naval vessel that supposedly they made. Okay, so I'm a little confused. So it was a naval vessel that they experimented on to make it go invisible, or was it portable?
It was supposed to make it invisible. Yeah,
that's what they said. I think they sent it back in time. I think it was a time travel experiment, and so it was probably on August 12th of 1943, which would have been during the Lions Gate, which is associated with 8/8, the figure 8, the loop, infinity. I think that's a special date, and it connects with what I believe was the hijack of our timeline, and that they superimposed their new occulted timeline on this realm. And I've identified 1492, which was the year of the fall of Granada in Spain and the Moors, and the beginning of Columbus's first voyage. 1717 is the midpoint year between 1492 and 1942. And 1717 was the year that the Premier Grand Lodge of England was founded. That was the year that same lodge adopted the Anno Lucis, which is the Masonic calendar, where they add 4,000 years to the year we're in. So you're bringing in Lucis and Lucifer and that whole idea. And that 1942 was the middle point of the World War II. And when I first started looking at information about the Philadelphia experiment, I thought it was on July 22nd of 1942. That's another date that's out there. So that would have put it in the same year. But July 22nd is in the heliacal rising of Sirius. So it's another astronomically important date. But so it's probably one of those two. But either works, and I'm leaning towards the August 12th of 1943, which is, probably the main date that comes up.
Is that D-Day, by the way?
No, I don't believe so. No,
Michelle,
D-Day would have been in 1945. It was close because the ending and the beginning and the ending of World War II was almost 6 years to the date, and I believe it was August 28th of 1939 that it started.
question. Do you feel like the Nazis have some involvement in this? Like, because a lot of people feel like the Nazis have like, and like kind of overtook our, like in the UFO, like I interview a lot of UFO experiencers, and I wanted to bring up Montauk, by the way, because I interview a lot of, people that say they're Montauk experiencers. I can't verify they are, but I know you want to get into Montauk a little bit. But what I was going to say was some of the people in the UFO lore, I call it lore because it's yet to be proven. Some of it is, but I just said UFO war for now, but they say that the Nazis they didn't lose World War II. They went to Antarctica. They established Base 211. Then they had the Washington flyover where they flew UFOs over the Capitol in 1952. And that was a sign to show their dominance of power. And then they said they made some kind of treaty with the U.S. And then they said they like got into our media and they've overtook our media. And that's kind of why they've kind of rotted America from the inside out. Some people think that,
So yes, they're very much a part of this. So I talked about the Freemasons and talk about the Vatican, talk about the British Crown. Who are they? So I think the Nazis have been with us since the beginning of this reset, and it's good that you bring up the UFO aspect of it. It's really hard when you start talking about negative ETs and that kind of thing, because most people aren't on board with that or knowledgeable about that. My education in this included a lot of the secret space program kinds of things, and watching that, and some of Alfred Lambermont Weber's work, Laura Eisenhower. So I'm familiar with that aspect of it, and it goes a long way to explain where we're at. The Anunnaki.
Where are we at? I mean,
we're at a messed up place.
Yeah,
we're at a messed up place. They're working on transhumanism, changing our genome, turning us into a genetically modified organism. They're working on gender confusion and depopulation. That's all been part of this plan. And when you look at the whole idea of negative ETs, so you get into the Anunnaki, the reptilians, others as well. I think they kind of got together, and I think they worked through Crowley and brought this element into this realm, and this inversion that's taken place from natural creation into creating this artificial reality, including us.
So are they? Where are they? Are they outside of this, or they're inside of it? We don't have a clue.
I don't know.
I was going to say, Ken has a theory that maybe space isn't really space. That it's maybe. I was thinking maybe it's another, dimension. Like. And Ken thinks that maybe we haven't proven we went to space, so it's like it's interesting. I don't know, but I'm open to all of it. You know what I mean? Like I'm open to hearing everything. You know what I mean? I don't know. I know I interview a lot of SSP experiencers, and they say that they've been somewhere. I don't know where they've been. You know what I mean? I'm not questioning. They've not
physically. Rob, has anybody ever said they've physically been to those planets? Because I know that there's a lot of everyone from, and I'm not going to put words in anybody's mouth, but from Tony Rodriguez to all the SSP, it's when I've asked the question to them directly, was it you there? Were you there physically? They said no. So I don't.
They feel like they happen. Like I know Tony feels like he's been to like the Ceres colony, like for sure. And other people feel like they've been outside this realm, like people feel like let's call it a realm. Like let's just for agreement, let's just call it a realm. So people feel like they've been out of this realm.
It's a realm. And so to answer your question as best I can, my expertise is the ley lines and the energy grid. And this advanced civilization that was worldwide. I'm doing some research right now where I'm starting to connect more dots. I don't think the world we see today on a map was like this before this happened, before this cataclysm that I absolutely believe was deliberately caused. It was more like Pangea. So you had like Tethys Ocean, and it was all brought together. And again, I'm doing very detailed research right now where I can back up what I'm saying. But in our science, they've hung their hat on tectonic plates and continental drift, slow changes over time being the reason for what we see today. The Ice
Michelle,
Age.
can I add something that's going to verify what you say? I think you'll find this interesting. I interviewed a couple women from Asheville, North Carolina, and they were telling me that how about the similarities between Asheville, North Carolina, and Ireland. But it's not just the landscape; it's the landscape, and then it's also the paranormal phenomena that happens there. They both have legends of little people. They both have like UFOs. They both have cryptids. They both have like a similar landscape. They're connected on a ley line, it seems like. That's what I was going to ask you about. It seems like maybe that part of the land was connected if it was Pangea. I'm just speculating, but I thought that was interesting.
It's all on the table. So let's say there was terra firma, there was solid earth. The Mediterranean wasn't a sea, and Mediterranean basically means middle land or middle earth. The ley lines would have been laid out on sacred geometry, and it would be the same kind of grid system that it's around us, it's around everything. And so the ancients built their civilization along these ley lines, which are electromagnetic energy and other things. And there were giant trees, and railroads were connected to this. And my belief is that the cataclysm that was created blew out the grid system, and then when the grid system was blown out, which was the railroads and the star forts and the lighthouses and the cathedrals and all this stuff, that when it was blown out, it just destroyed the surface of the earth. Just destroyed it.
Could very well be.
And that the controllers, the cabal, the same ones that did 9/11, the cabal, came in and they set up their new world order based on the ruins of the old world civilization. And then immediately, and I'm going to show you some of the research that I've done here in just a moment, and that immediately they had to find a replacement energy source for the free energy system that they knocked out immediately. And so they started in Pennsylvania, they got the canals up and running, and then they got the railroads up and running, and they started the mining. And then put everybody to work, got their new economic system, which is basically a wage slavery system.
Yeah.
So they've been squeezing us dry forever in this, and all of us, and getting all the resources and getting rich on the resources and leaving us with crumbs. And then when they didn't need the infrastructure anymore, they just took it out after they cut down the trees and exhausted all the mines. They took out the railroad.
And I was going to say, do you feel like the resources are being used by some off-world species? It doesn't necessarily have to be extraterrestrial. It could be interdimensional, or
Sure.
some other being that might be outside this realm that's harvesting our resources.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. They've done so much harvesting here. It has to be going somewhere. I mean, there's so much. It can't be possibly being used here. Maybe some of it. But so I think these negative beings were behind it. They kind of got together, formed a plan. I think fallen angels are in the mix. So I'm going to try to get back to your question, Ken, because in the process of the years that I've been doing this research, I know the Earth is not what we're told.
Yep.
I know nothing is what we're told. And I see Earth as like a grand central station for the universe. It was like the kingdom of God in physical form. We worked together. We were much bigger. We were in like a unity consciousness. We were creating beauty and harmony and love and healing. And it was just a perfectly tuned scientific and musical instrument. And that was how they were able to destroy it. They mistuned that instrument. So sound and frequency, you hear how important that is. So they mistuned the healing frequencies, the solfeggios. They changed the tuning of our music to 440
and the symbology.
432. And you can see, if you look at a diagram of water with 432, it looks beautiful and perfect. And you look at 440 and it's all messed up. So we're not on a sphere. And I've seen maps come up on my feeds lately, and I don't have the I don't have my phone turned off because it tends to ding when I do these kinds of things. But somebody left me a comment that said I needed to look into something, and I want to say it's called Our Confusion in Italian, Confundum.
I've heard of it. Yes.
Somebody's work.
Hold on. Yeah.
And
Italian PC, the flat Earth guy.
it's so what I've seen come up on my social media feeds are the circles. So you have our realm, and then you have these extended circles.
Yeah, that's Italian
And
PC. He
the
has a YouTube channel.
extended,
He's like yeah, that's awesome. He shows all the other realms kind of outside our realm. Is that what you're talking about?
yeah. So I've seen that. I'm not familiar with it, but I've seen that, and the idea that extraterrestrial means from out there.
Another land. Yeah, other lands, what it means. Yep.
So I'm open to that. It's not an area of expertise. Talk about dimensions. Is the universe beneath us? I've heard that. I'm seeing things come up with water and wells in the research that I'm doing. I think there's a lot more to that, like in places like Florida. And I think when the shore was destroyed and the land fell off, there were these freshwater wells that mixed with salt water. And like you see that along the Panhandle, Florida, and they're like they call them coastal dune lakes. And I think those are the remnants of what was fresh water, and that this civilization had a very sophisticated hydrological system. So if you see, like if you look at Google Earth or something, or you live somewhere and you know that there's a circular lake there, they want to say it's created by meteors or whatever. I think it's part of an ancient hydrological system. And I'm working on pulling together information from that. So we were literally living on paradise. I think the whole plane or whole realm was the Garden of Eden. There may have been a physical Eden on Earth, and that I think that was around Yemen and Ethiopia in that area, because today is the Gulf of Aden, and they've hit that area very hard with civil war and bombing, and they just really messed up Africa in general, but particularly Yemen and Ethiopia. And Yemen's still getting whacked today, and their people are suffering humanitarian crises all over the place. So that's been intentionally done. It's like the controllers have a particular intense hatred for that part of the world, but I think it's because it's sacred. And so I think it could very well be what you're talking about, Ken. Again, it's not my area of expertise. I'm just kind of going along with my own research, and I'm finding things that support, yes, our perception of space, time, and place has been most definitely tampered with. And I do believe these are negative beings that have come in here that are parasites. They don't have what we have. They don't have our soul. They don't have our connection to Creator. And so that's why they want us. That's why they've gone through all this trouble, and we're so valuable to them because of our DNA and because of our soul. And they've been siphoning that. They've been harvesting that.
Do you think there are people here that do not have souls right now?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. I
And
think
one
cloning
thing
is.
you said is that I'm sorry, Michelle, I just got to ask you this real quick. You said they're harvesting our DNA. Do you think like some of those alien abductions that happened from like this, you've heard about it from the 1960s to the 1990s, like hundreds of thousands of people said they got abducted. And every time they said they got abducted, they said they had DNA taken. Now, I'm not saying they were abducted by aliens, but they could be abducted by something that was doing it, maybe something that was working for the controllers, because you mentioned harvesting DNA, and it made me think of that immediately,
Well, they harvest DNA with the PCA tests or PCP tests.
Yep.
So you mean like the 23andMe, like the 23andMe?
Yeah, that too. So our DNA is valuable. Our energy is valuable. They suck it from us. They're like energy vampires all the time, and in ways that we don't even know. Our energy is being harvested. You've heard of Loosh, and they thrive on pain and suffering of that low vibrational energy. But they've been trying to figure out a way how to live on us. So we're like the host for this, and this, whatever this is, this parasitic consciousness.
I got another question. Sorry, go ahead.
Let me just go. So they've gone a long way in their plans. They got far because they gave us amnesia. They knocked us out. They tinkered with our own DNA. We're much smaller than we were. Supposedly, we have other DNA that we didn't have before, and that kind of thing. But we're still, we're still human. But they can look like us. I don't know if you've seen things with the masks, the sophisticated masks that make them look real.
Biden got it.
They've got so they've got these technologies, and they've been working on hooking us up to their technologies. They probably already have etherically, just to keep harvesting that energy. And
I believe they need consent.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I believe they need consent. I don't think they can just take it.
Well, they do need consent, but they get it by lying to us. They don't tell us about any of this, and that's how they've gotten it. That's their, supposed karmic get out of jail free card, but they're not going to get away with it. And we're waking up, and I absolutely believe they're on their way out. There's no doubt in my mind.
Do you believe that we're in, my friend Mark from Forever Conscious Research is in the channel, and I have to give him a shout out because he specializes in the soul trap. He talks about he's done NDE cases where he thinks basically we've been, these controllers, whoever they are, have been reincarnating us over and over and over, like that we're in a soul trap. And I kind of agree with it because sometimes like life on earth is kind of miserable. You know what I mean? Like that they loosh off us, that they've been putting us in like a endless cycle of reincarnation. And he's not the only one. Farside Institute remote viewed this. They've remote viewed what they call death traps, so they call it death trap. Other people call it soul trap. I'm trying to think of what, there's other people too. It's a common topic,
reincarnation is a spiritual process though. That's what I can't understand. Like there are a lot of religions that one of their foundational tenets is reincarnation. So like if I have a problem with the boxing of that as a soul trap. Like I understand that you would need consent to come back and that it could be a trick. Like that part is legitimate to me, but the trapped part of this doesn't make a lot of sense because I think if people really wanted to, if they wanted to lose our energy, they would kick the people who are the positive people out of here. They'd say, go away. Like, why do we need these people over here? I mean, you're just messing it up.
So that's where the awakening is coming in. They darn near got away with it, but they lost control of the narrative. They gave us the internet for control, and we've used it to wake up. And they do have to have our consent. And they've gotten it by lying to us, like with 9/11. They got our consent by lying to us.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's how they've done it. They invented Hollywood to shape our minds and our perceptions about their narrative and what to believe, Wild West and all this other stuff.
Do you believe the basis of religion has been hijacked that way, as far as sovereignty is concerned? Because it's like the prodigal son, like Lucifer. It just seems like to me, like when you go away from the establishment, you're like an evil, sovereign, selfish being. Yet we're here to experience, or whatever you believe is not along those lines. Like that's just the way.
Organized religion came in with the hijack. The original civilization knew how to connect with their higher self, meditation and raising spiritual energy, and we knew who we were. And I believe that's the original tribes of Israel. Is this original civilization? It's very confusing because the controllers chopped it all up and gave it back to us in a different form.
And yes.
All of that stuff was known, and they tinkered with holy books. And I'm not saying everything is been falsified, but they put what they wanted in there. So a lot of people hear about the Council of, let's just use something from mainstream, Council of Nicaea, and they remove all of these books from the canon, the Western canon. That's kind of in essence what we're talking about. They removed the books that tell us about our power and our connection to spirit and each other, and left in the books that took us out of that and the ones that were useful to them. but it's been a very effective mechanism, that's for sure, because
I feel
it's
like they created sin to make us guilt trip. You know what I mean? So when we die and we go before some kind of judgment, I'm not Christian anymore, but the people that are Christian definitely believe in sin, and they believe that if they sin, then that they have some kind of like endless guilt trip, like I guess you can go to confession
so,
and that somewhat clears that up. But, I don't know. I believe they invented sin for a reason,
so the evil that infiltrated here is so evil. They put the blame on us. They put the blame on us. You're sinful, dirty creatures that need to, have forgiveness or whatever denomination, which is interesting because that's the same word that's used for money, dividing people up. All the religious denominations, same thing with denominations of money. It's all about fracturing us from wholeness. We are all the same being. I'm with you, Ken.
We're
one.
not, because some of us don't have a soul, but like humanity derived, the original humanity, not the ones who've been plugged in lately, or the one have been AI'd or cloned or hijacked. Like,
right. So they've misused technology again in order to trick us. And when we talk about the transgendered people that we don't know are transgendered in our world, because that's not how they're presented. And there's bunches of them. That's part of this inversion. And so they were betting that we would never wake up. They did everything they could to keep us asleep, with the fluoride and the chemtrails, and they put poisons in our clothes,
how about the resonant frequency of our bodies in the Schumann resonance and those kind of frequency hijacks?
Absolutely. That's all. Even when you go, like if you live anywhere near a bell tower and it plays Winchester chimes however many times a day, it's mistuned. It's not the original frequencies. They've got these discordant frequencies going out every day, every 15 minutes or every half hour or every hour. It's like that's part of the control net has been frequency. Others as well. I mean, the drugs, the access to drugs, addictions, alcohol, cigarettes, all the things that they make freely available, and in many cases very cheap. Like if you go to Las Vegas, you can gamble and drink free booze. That's all lowering our consciousness, and that's where they want to keep us. And the same thing with the ley lines. They have a lot of their big false flags on ley lines, and that has an impact on our consciousness as well, because that's connected to us. And so, but they lost control of the narrative, and more people aren't buying it anymore and are looking for answers. And that's where you come in. That's where my work comes in. It's a different perspective outside of the official narrative and what we've been taught in school from day one, and reinforced with movies and music, and our whole culture is based around this, these ritual activities. So even when you go to a sporting event or a concert, they're harvesting energy there too. Our energy, our charge, our excitement, the opposing teams. It's all part of this vast harvesting system that they've set up.
Michelle, you said you studied the secret space program, so I got to ask you about this. Like, one of my audience, I have a lot of audience members who are targeted individuals, or they feel like they're targeted individuals. Do you have any idea why they might be doing that? Like, do you think? I mean, some people think it might be they feel like they might be targeting people just to eventually roll it out on the mass population, or do you feel like maybe those people have more light and they're trying to bring those people's light down? You know what I mean by light? Like they're more like their energy field, like they're trying to target their energy field so they aren't successful with something like that.
Those are probably some hidden technologies they've been implementing. I don't think they have the kind of power they used to. And I think when they had full power, just from the kinds of things that I've seen. So I was subscribed, I guess you could say, to to Gaia.com for a few
Yeah.
years and watched a lot of David Wilcock stuff and Corey Good. And it was through them I learned about the secret space program. So I watched a lot of that stuff in around 2013, 2014. And that was when I was really starting to get the information that I needed to put out what I'm putting out now. And learning about that side of it. And absolutely, I mean, the things that like Corey Good would talk about, and you know, others about, you know, people getting killed. You know, that was routine. And when Justice Scalia was killed, he was killed. He was at one of those.
Who was it? Who was it?
Antonin Scalia. He was at out with one of those secretive, shadowy orders doing something in the woods somewhere, and he had a pillow placed over his face, and he died of natural causes, you know, according to what we're told. You know, things like that were happen regularly. I don't think we're there anymore. I think we've you know, we're gaining in our own level of consciousness, and they can't, they like you said, they have to have our consent. They can't operate when they lose their darkness, their cover. And
so do you feel like that's kind of an awareness thing and a conscious kind of a spectrum? I mean, if they, because I believe that there are levels of frequency that you feel, emotions you feel, times of, I say that frequency and emotions, like, because we all shift based on how we're feeling emotions because we're human. Like, do you feel it's possible or likely that you can kind of block out all that stuff? I mean, because I really feel that some days I'm untouchable, other days I'm weaker.
If we know our power, absolutely. And that's what they're trying to prevent. When we collectively wake up to this, they can't do a darn thing. They, you know, they have to convince us they are the authority. So they've tricked us into worshiping them. They've tricked us into giving away our power, giving them our power, handing over our sovereignty. And that's the only way they can keep it, is if we stay tricked. And it's getting harder and harder to do because it just seems to be more exposed. You know, what they're doing, how they do it. People don't watch the mainstream news like they used to. Some do. You know, I know in my parents' generation, that's the thing. You know, watch the evening news, read the paper. But the hold that they had is just disappearing. And people can do their own research.
Hopefully they will.
Don't have to go with the narrative anymore, and then find out what the narrative says. So if you go ahead and ask a question, and I want to show you some research I've done about what I'm talking about.
Are you going to talk about the ley lines? I mean, kind of describe or talk about what is that what your research is presenting about ley lines? Because I have questions about the energy grids and the ley lines. As I've watched some of your videos before, it's not really interpreted like how the theory came about.
All right, let me pull some stuff here. So my work is going in a lot of different directions now because I started researching the ley lines. That's the best way to describe it. My tracking ley lines is what led me to a lot of other things and a lot of other insights, and you know, being able to compare that everything looks the same all over the earth. The infrastructure, you know, it's all integrated. I'm just looking for something. I don't know where it is. I don't know where in this tattered map it is. Here it is. Okay. So,
first of all, thank you for your research. And thank you.
This is amazing, Michelle.
I think a lot of people get distracted with everyday life, and you know, it happens, right? But people with discernment and sovereignty really need to step up, and without them and having the guts to talk about it, we go nowhere. So thank you for that.
Yep, you're welcome. And I know more and more people are doing the same. And that's what it takes. There's just so much. I mean, no one person can do it, and we're all guided into different research and different areas of research and have different theories. So I'm like, there was one long continuous civilization that got destroyed. There are other people that talk about multiple resets. I don't see that. I'm not close to it. It's just I came in on a different thread. Let me put it that way. And
Yeah.
I'm motivated to do this research the way that it's come to me. I couldn't do it the way it's come to somebody else. But we're all contributing to bringing back this lost knowledge that's just been, ripped from us. And
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I think it's open-minded discussions like this that need to happen, where we're just, exploring all possibilities, leaving nothing on the table. You know what I mean? Like just kind of putting all our cards on the table and seeing what puzzle pieces fit.
There's only so much complaining that needs to be done. Like in the end, you can be upset and live in your own emotions and feelings and humanity for as long as you want to. But in the end, which is why I don't agree with the soul trap. Like you have to get off, stop parking the car and get your ass out and walk, or do whatever you have to do to get it going.
Yeah.
and the controllers benefit from that. Anytime they can get us at odds with each other, it's not helping us. And I think that's what people need to realize. We're under existential threat by these beings that don't care about us, that mock us, that thrive on our suffering. They're the ones that are benefiting from our emotional states, things that, when we get mad or, whatever happens to disturb our serenity. So love, peace, calm, joy is a high state of vibration. Fear is not, and they've got us conditioned into fear, and it's very effective. I'm sure we all struggle with it. I know I do. But I don't let it stop me from doing what I need to do. And so, what I'm doing, this does not make me afraid. Other things might, this does not. It's like, it's got to get out there. So where I started was back in 2016, I found, this is what I call the star tetrahedron of North America, which is a figure of sacred geometry. So it looks like a Star of David. And people have told me that's actually a Star of Rumphin, but that's another point of discord. Everything's been inverted. So this is sacred geometry. This is from the creation shape of the universe. There's nothing evil about this shape. It's our light body. It's our Merkaba, same shape. Everything's been inverted. So people get all wrapped around the axle. But this is where my research started. And by the time I found this, I knew that the ancients were very precise. And I'd watched other people doing Leylines. Dowsers brought back a lot of this information because they find the electromagnetic lines by dowsing. So I learned about that. Megalithomania conferences. I started watching around 2011. And I'm seeing these presentations from dowsers and alternative researchers looking at these things and, seeing the same things in like Turkey and South America and, other alignments people found. So I had good preparation when I found that, and I knew enough to extend the lines out. And then I wrote down the places and the cities that were in alignment. And that's what all my spreadsheets are here.
So are your ley lines just like, they're just places, lines on a map, basically? That's what a ley line would be?
In this case, I started out with the map. I ended up having to superimpose it on a globe because I wanted to see both sides. And then I took a magnifying glass and I wrote down places that, were long distance linear alignments, went around the world. I found circles, and I based it on the idea of sacred geometry. And knowledge about sacred geometry started to come back in probably mid to late 20th century. It used to be the thing, that's what this whole place is based on, but that's something else that got removed. And then, as part of keeping us down, the controllers have used sacred geometry to control us. So they've misused that. And like I said, done a lot of stuff on these ley lines that, contribute to us being at a lower level of consciousness. And I'm doing more and more research on exactly what I mean by that. And that's basically finding a lot of elementary schools, government buildings, sports stadiums, military facilities on these ley lines.
Are those most of those buildings on ley lines, are they ancient from prior resets, or are they're current?
A lot of them are. I mean, a lot of them are original infrastructure. So a lot of people went to school in a building that looks like a castle. And a lot of those buildings are gone, but there's still a lot standing.
And when do you think the last reset was, real quick? So
I was just going to say, I think there was one long civilization. I think the latest reset that we're all looking at, whether we think there were many resets or one civilization, I think we're looking at somewhere in the mid 1700s is kind of the beginning of when I think they started to come in and build their new system on top of the old.
So like the Renaissance period. I'm bad with history dates.
So I think it's sometime in the mid 1700s is the beginning of our new history, and that beings behind this. And let's say I'm kind of landing on the Jesuits as being the likeliest revisionist historians that gave us history before then. I think basing it on original history, I think they kind of concocted it. But at some point, the controllers wrote themselves into history, and what we're taught is their history of what they're doing here.
Yep.
And so I'm looking, let's say, sometime in the 1700s is when that started, and that the 1800s were like big busy time of the whole.
How do you envision that reset restarted? Because I've seen the orphan train stuff. I've seen the crazy factories, the buildings that they used. Like it's hard to realize how that restarted. If there was a flood or a disaster, how did that restart? Did we were we blanketed memory wise and just woke up like, what the hell happened? Or
something like that probably happened. So I'm saying that this catastrophe that destroyed the surface of the earth was deliberately caused. I think Aleister Crowley and the Philadelphia experiment was part of that. So
I have a question, Michelle. I just thought of something. Do you think they had a mass calling at some point of some of the people that knew the old information and kept the younger generations around, and then introduced things like the World's Fairs to shape the way their perception of
something
reality
like
was?
that? I think this cataclysm just buried people. So giants and things like that. They were finding giant bones all over the 19th century. They still find giant bones today, but they call them hoaxes.
Or let's call them dinosaurs.
So I think we were much bigger. I think this civilization wiped them out, but there were still pockets of people. I mean, we hear about the underground infrastructure. There were places for people to live. So the survivors and the controllers, these families, the DuPonts, the Astors, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all those were major players in setting things up. And then they that's where you probably get the incubators, the infantoriums at the World's Fairs. They probably had nurseries, which is probably why they're called nurseries. Seriously, I think they were genetically engineering us. I think they were socially engineering us and human engineering.
So you think they were making people?
I do.
You do,
but I think they were absolutely original people, no question.
Or they had original DNA, basically.
Right, and pockets
incubator babies.
But they were also creating, and I believe that the original civilization we also know as Moors, and so with melanated skin, melanin is actually a superconductor. And if you look up the value of melanin, I would invite you to do that. There's an astronomical figure of how much melanin is worth.
I would look into that for sure. If I can make it.
So you think they're harvesting melanin? You think?
Oh,
Somehow?
sure. Yeah. I mean, the original, the people that they held up as slaves in this narrative were the original builders of this civilization. But we're all slaves. So that's we're all slaves in this system. But they were particularly targeted, and they have been particularly targeted for genocide and things like that. Again, we all have, but in particular, the controllers do not want that original human, that original DNA to exist, because they want a human that they can control. They want a human in their image. And that's what we're seeing playing out with all the social agendas today.
Do you think that waking up is a general term, right? I mean, it could be hijacked a lot of different ways. Do you think it is a sentience thing, a consciousness thing? Do you think it's on a spectrum? I mean, do you think that we were like hit with a wave of no memory, and then all of a sudden, like after generations, we're slowly like evolving into a sentience or consciousness?
I think we're already there. And I think they, when they destroyed the civilization, created a cataclysm, brought in the kind of human DNA they wanted, kind of set up their new system, they've been conditioning us and programming us. Movies, books, virtual reality kinds of things. I mean, they want us, and what they really want is our soul in like a cyborg kind of body. They want to harvest us permanently. And that was where this was going. Again, I do not believe they're going to get there. I don't even want to put that in hesitant terms. That's where we were going, though. There's no question that that's where we're going. They're just not going to get away with it. They're not going to be
singularity. Would you put it in terms of that, where they were trying to get to?
It's like, whose singularity are you looking for?
Are you? I know this is going to sound really crazy, but like in the well, it's not crazy at all. But in the past like few months, I've seen Justin Timberlake, Imagine Dragons, and there's another major artist that's talked about Eminem, talking about reincarnation, basically rising and being shut off and then coming back. And I don't know if they're talking about they've been cloned, which I believe they have been, and coming back. But like, is that how a consciousness like comes about? Or I mean, are you familiar with what they're showing us? They're showing us this in mainstream media now. It's crazy.
Well, and so it's a war for consciousness. And so where we are now this has been predicted. Our awakening was predicted, which is why the controllers worked so hard to keep us from waking up, so that we would voluntarily agree to what they wanted for us. And it was never going to happen, but again, it's challenging to be here right now, right? I mean, This is not an easy time to be here. But when we didn't know, then we have these I grew up mostly in the 70s. That was my childhood. I was born in 63. Pretty good time. I mean, I had a good life growing up. Played with the kids on the street, go to the swimming pool, things seemed normal, whatever that is. It was going to last forever. And things have just gotten progressively turned upside down to where we are now, 1984 and 2024. But I think if you look at the age of Aquarius and all of that, the Schumann resonance increasing, I think there's more light coming in. I do believe we have help from positive ETs, whatever they are. And so that's coming, and that's helping us. And so they would win if we just went back to sleep and just said, okay, this is too much trouble.
And that's my belief of why I don't believe this could be a soul trap. Like, how could they not stop it if it was a trap? Like, I mean, seriously, how could they let us have these conversations? How could they not see the end game wasn't going to work if we were trapped? tricked.
I don't know.
Maybe a trick.
Maybe they had a way to trap us all this time, and now we're figuring a way out.
Yeah, but they would be able to retroactively make it stop. Like they could stop it right now, Rob. They could energy target any of us, even if they felt like they couldn't. They can make it. They can make it stop.
I know I feel like I've been here many times, and I know I feel like I don't want to be here, and I know I don't want to come back. That's how I feel about the whole thing. Like, I feel like I've definitely been here a lot of times against my will. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just like a resonance I get. I don't know. I mean, everybody feels differently, you know? I don't know.
And that's not my area of expertise, but what I will say to both of you is I have heard that. And for a while, there were a lot of things I was grappling with. I mean, I was kind of paying attention to Nibiru, and are we going to, something going to happen from that? Are all these things that were predicted that were bad things going to happen, like, the end of the earth and the destruction of the earth anytime now, those kinds of things. I was like, maybe not. But I'm so focused on this work and so excited about people waking up and asking questions and being a part of that and believing that we have a better future ahead of us, and that whatever they might have had in place, whatever machinery or anything else to trap us, it's not going to work. Even if they had it, it's not going to work. And that we are powerful beings. And so they've given us all the stuff to, like I said earlier, poison us and keep us down and, get us fighting, arguing with each other and that kind of thing. And I think, we're blessed to be living in these times, like Warrior for Truth is saying, is that light will overcome the darkness. Do not be afraid that these evil beings are going to win, because they're not.
You got to keep fighting. Rob, I empathize with you and with people who feel like there's no better tomorrow. You've been held against your will. I understand it. I think that we need to just keep fighting and if we are going to win, then
Emily, she agrees with you kind of. She says, Emily Howard, I talked to her a lot offline. She's really interesting. She watches a lot of videos and stuff, and she studies a lot. She says, I think the only trap is on the mental level, how they take advantage of the fact that we create our own reality. That Lori Spagna talks about.
We definitely create a lot of our reality. Absolutely, I can attest to that for sure.
But before we go on, I do want to talk about, if I can get back to my share screen. I don't know what's going on here.
I did hijack it. See, I told you, Rob, I was going to hijack this thing.
No worries. That's not a problem. I can talk about these things forever. I've done so much research on so many different things that I cover a lot of different areas, and one of them is hidden history.
Well, one of the things I find from Austin, while you're pulling that up, that you do is you've been able to look at a lot, and you've been able to find a lot of the old architecture. Like you did that, you do these tours of areas where you're showing a lot of the old system. It looks like, that like they haven't been able to erase. I find that fascinating. Like you did one here in Pittsburgh, and like I didn't even know some of that stuff existed in Pittsburgh, and I live here. So everybody got to check out Michelle's website. It's piercingtheveilofillusion.com and her YouTube page. I have them linked in the description. Her YouTube page will blow you away. Honestly, to put it lightly, it'll blow you away.
So I just want to show you, and hopefully everybody can see this okay. So this is my website, and so my videos that I have videos with other things and other people and other subjects, but I turn all of my blog posts into videos. And this is where I started. I showed you the spreadsheets of places that I wrote down that were in alignment. And my first couple of blogs were kind of general things that I had opinions about, that I found on these alignments. But then I started actually tracking alignments. And when I started tracking alignments, I started getting all of this information in that has led me to where I am today with this, which is actually pretty knowledgeable about the original civilization, called the ancient Moorish civilization, that goes back to Mu and Atlantis and existed until relatively recently. And I went from place to place, again, places I had never even heard of before, wrote about it. And then I got to a point with that tracking of alignments where I had enough information that I could start pulling it out and start putting bigger picture things together. Like how these architects of the 19th century, for example, have all of these monumental architectural works that are attributed to them. And it's like everything on Earth has a story about how it got there, but it just doesn't make any sense when you really look at it. I was looking at World's Fairs and pulling that out. How monuments and memorials hide the advanced ancient civilization. And somewhere in there, I learned about the mud flood, and I started looking into that, and it became part of my working hypothesis, if you will. Finding star forts on these alignments, and then it just kept growing, and I was looking into historical fires and pulling out information about that, and then the literature and art of the 1800s and 1900s as programming devices. Looking into that. Trolley parks, which were a thing back around, the 1900s, and they're pretty much gone, and definitely the trolleys are gone.
We had trolleys here in Pittsburgh. That's one thing I do remember. Or we had a trolley system, I think, at one point. I think I can remember that. Yeah.
Yep. And the question is, why did they go away? Why did they take them out? It's a lot of work, and they brought in,
Do you think that the railroads and the trolleys, I asked this last time, I believe, when last time we talked, were actually transportation purposes, or were they something else?
Originally, they were part of the grid system, part of the free energy system, and they probably were transportation also, but they definitely had a function on the grid. And so I've looked into depth into that, and then also things like incline railways, like the ones in Pittsburgh, but there used to be 15 of them, and there were incline railways all over the world, and they're pretty much gone with a few exceptions. I looked into the connection between railroads and waterfalls and the old world bridges of the new world. So I've been doing this research for quite some time, but then somebody said, my friend Aaron, a viewer of mine that I've been working with closely for almost a year now. He doesn't have a platform, but he's been invaluable. He suggested that I look into Pennsylvania and West Virginia and Appalachia. And it's just been a gold mine. And I had already done so much research that it just kind of helped me put a lot more puzzle pieces together. But when he first sent me some PDFs that he had put together, look at this, look at Boxcar Rocks, for example. I was just going to go through that, and I was just going to look at these places like Boxcar Rocks. It looks like a megalithic wall.
Yeah.
And then just list them out and move on. Well, there was so much information in here. I was here for like 2 months doing research. And then I broke them down into 4 parts because there were so many different themes in here that I didn't want people to lose that, because this original one I'm looking at right now, my research was kind of meandering, but it was just absolutely important that I did it that way. And then I pulled out these other themes because it's like, okay, I want people to see this particularly. But so what they tell us, for example, about Boxcar Rocks is that they were likely left over from melting glacial deposits during the last ice age. That's their fallback story. So I see that here at Boxcar Rocks. And then you can look up them up close, and you see where they've been cut and shaped and stacked here. And I'm looking at these places. And the Appalachian Trail goes through here. And then you come across canal locks like this one. And it was said to have been built between 1792 and 1828. Well, that's pretty substantial masonry there. And and very old looking.
Yeah, it is. It looks kind of ancient.
So what they tell us in our narrative is that canals were built starting between mostly 1790 and 1855, and it started in Pennsylvania, where the first legislation surveying canals was passed in 1762. And that the construction of the Union Canal was said to have started under the administration of George Washington in 1792 and was touted as the golden link in providing an early transportation route for shipping anthracite coal and lumber to Philadelphia, And so supposedly they passed this main line of public works that funded all the construction for canals, roads, railroads, and things like that. And that took place in, I want to say, 1826 is when that was supposed to have happened. So Pennsylvania is a very important part of this story of where it got started, of I believe digging up this infrastructure so that they could reuse it and then start their harvesting of lumber and coal and iron ore and things like that.
Just another example of the Mandela effect pointing us in the right direction with the monocle and the Pennsylvania Railroad and the railroads.
Yeah.
Maybe telling us, look here.
Yeah, sure. They do have to tell us. They do tell us.
I mean,
they just don't tell us. They're telling us.
It's amazing how the Mandela effect, I mean, to my knowledge, has no negative connotations around it whatsoever. Like everything that's been taken away, everything that's been shown, given, whatever, there's nothing negative about it whatsoever. So
I'm going down this list of places that Aaron sent me. So World's End State Park in Forksville, and you see the S-shaped bends, and I believe that was created not by nature, but part of this energy system. And I really have delved deep into this, so I'm not saying that without a lot of research to back it up. I'm looking at architecture, and then I'm going into the Endless Mountains here in Pennsylvania in the northeastern corner. It was supposedly sedimentary rocks of sandstone and shale collected from sediments. And then, you have things that look like they were constructed in these big bridges. Again, to me, that would have been Old World too. You've got these stone blocks at World's End State Park. You have the same idea at Clear Creek State Forest with Beartown rocks. And they all basically have the same kind of story. They were formed by glaciers millions of years ago. They had the railroad going through there. The trees were cut down. The depletion of the old growth forest by lumber and iron companies that took place in the mid to late 19th century. Supposedly wildfires were caused by the sparks of passing steam trains that kept the formation of new growth forest from occurring. And then somewhere conservationists became alarmed that the forest would never regrow. So they got the state to purchase the land from the lumber and iron companies that were happy to sell them. And so that's when a lot of these places were reforested. But this story repeats itself over and over again through this area. And then I'm finding these recreational trails that used to be railroad tracks along these S-shaped river bends in these places. And I had already been onto that, so it really got my attention when I saw that this was part of the energy grid system. The co-location of these railroad tracks and the rivers would have served a function. And I think the reason a lot of gold was found in creeks was because that was part of the conductivity for the system. And anyway, I'm looking at giants and all different kinds of things, but I'm seeing these.
I think a lot happened in Pennsylvania though. Like there's someone, the girl in the chats she's from out that way out east, and I'm from Pittsburgh. So but it seems like a lot was going on in Pennsylvania. Like, why do you think that was? Do you think it was because of one of the original founding states or something like that,
No,
or like?
No, I think the reason that the Pennsylvania is called the Keystone State is like it was the key to this reset.
Oh my God!
Is what I believe.
So it's not diabolical.
It is. It's very diabolical.
So
they're let me go on. They're harvesting
Ken's
these.
from Philly. Aren't you originally from Philly, Ken?
Yeah. And I was born in '76, and my dad was born in '42. So yeah, I got some interesting ties to what's going on today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is amazing. Sorry, Michelle. I'm sorry. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. So they're cutting down all the trees. Basically, all these place to place, same story. The same rock structures that look like megalithic stones and cities, and they're described as cities with streets and overhangs and channels. They're all hidden away in the state park system. They're megaliths. They're not natural, but they're telling us that all this is natural.
Yeah.
And then they bring the CCC in the 30s, and they start reforesting, and then they tell us that the CCC guys, the kids basically were building these things, and so we don't question it. They're depleting all the resources. The Central Lumber Company of Pennsylvania, the trees in Pennsylvania used to be that tall. Things like that. And again, I've been able to make bigger connections. So when I say that they knocked out the energy system, and then as quickly as possible, they got things up and running, harvested the resources, made tons of money, and then eventually took the rail out and replaced it with roads. And so we're basically on what was originally the free energy system. We're driving our cars and things like that. And let me move on. I've got a ton of information here, so it's I've really detailed it. But I want to talk about Pittsburgh, because when you talk about who did this, the names of Mellon come up. Carnegie
Mellon.
Frick.
Right?
Yes. They are all part of this. They were Freemasons. And Pittsburgh was like a major headquarters for the development of not only the U.S. steel industry, but this whole opening up of this new system and heading out west. And so if you look at the architecture like of the East Liberty neighborhood in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, where you had Mellon, Hines, Carnegie, and Westinghouse living at one time, and you look at the architecture, it's just mind-blowingly beautiful and ornate. And they tell us the story of who built it and when they built it, whenever that would have been in the 19th century. And there was all this rail infrastructure here and all that stuff. This was original old world architecture. But they came in and they took credit for it all. And whether they're kind of reverse engineering everything, and then you've got Andrew and Richard coming in, establishing the Mellon Bank. At one time, Mellon Financial Services was one of the world's largest money management firms.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they changed to I can't remember what they're called now. They changed the name. They're still in business. They just changed the name.
That'd probably be BNY Mellon.
Yes, that's exactly it. Bank of New York Mellon. Yeah, that's exactly it. I had a job interview there once because I used to be a loan officer. I was that was when I was like, we're fully enthralled in the matrix.
Right.
I was 10 years of my life. I kind of regret.
Well, as we all were. I was not awake to this probably until the last 20 years, and I just turned 61. So if you look at the richest men in history, you've got Richard Mellon, had an adjusted wealth of $103 billion and was the 5th wealthiest American of all time. His brother, Andrew, behind him at number 15 was had an adjusted wealth of $63.2 billion. So these guys are getting rich.
Henry Flagler.
He was the co-founder of Standard Oil with
Standard Oil,
Rockefeller.
Yeah. And East Coast Railway in Florida.
You know, and that was around the railroads and getting the railroads up and running. Andrew Mellon was a close friend of Henry Clay Frick, who is a big player in this. Both men were members of the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club, along with Andrew Carnegie. And it was on their property that the dam failed that caused the Johnstown flood. And I go into depth earlier in this. I believe they caused the flood.
Yeah, they still talk about that in Johnstown to this day. I was just in Johnstown. I went with my friend to a Trump rally there, and you know, it's that's like they have a big marker there about the Johnstown flood.
So I believe these wealthy men and their compadres of the fishing club created the Johnstown flood deliberately. And there is evidence to support that. I go into great detail on that. Henry Clay Frick was, if you look up his information on Wikipedia, it says he was largely responsible for the alterations on the dam that caused the flood. It says it. And that the American Red Cross, which has dubious origins and a lot of these names, Harriman and Rockefeller associated with the American Red Cross, that was one of their first disasters. So anyway, these guys.
God. When people fund the American Red Cross, they're given directly to the Rockefellers, in a way.
It's dubious.
Yeah, Oh my God. You hear that, guys? Don't or be discerning when you.
And I have looked. No, I do have a piece on my website and my YouTube channel about research I did into the Red Cross, if anybody's interested. And it touches on that a lot. And so you've got Andrew Carnegie, the 6th richest American of all time, estimated wealth of $101 billion. Both the Carnegie and Rockefeller Foundations heavily involved in the American educational system. And, when you look at the woke agenda that we've got today, they're behind it.
Yeah.
What's going on. They wanted standardized worker skills. They did not want the educational system to be about critical thinking. They wanted it to be about people that, children how to read, write, and do arithmetic. And
regurgitate.
So that was, have you been able to see what I've been showing?
Yeah,
Okay,
perfectly.
Okay, I switched, I think. Okay. So anyway, I think I'll stop there, but let me find you. Okay. I've done a lot of research. It's like,
it appears so.
Way too much to cover. I wanted to give you the general idea.
I want to give you an idea, Michelle. I want to give you an idea of research.
Yeah, these very, very wealthy men are behind and funding what's been going on in this world and getting rich from all of the devastation that they created. They created a new system. They took out perfectly good rail infrastructure and they replaced it with roads and cars. And, in the meantime, the Fords and, all these people are in the same club and they're getting incredibly wealthy off of this.
I don't know what you have lined up next, but I have a road I would like you to at least explore mentally. When you're exploring history, you can probably try to find navigation patterns in how people travel and how they have grown up. So I thought about graveyards and looking for tombstones. And I've never seen a tombstone before like 1800 something, even online. Obviously not me, but like St. Augustine's very old. It's the oldest city in the U.S. supposedly. I mean, I guess culturally, but it's not. People are here regardless. But you don't see tombstones marking dead people from before 1800s. Why is that a roadmap that you could explore to find out patterns?
I've done a little bit. Again, I think that's where, we're talking about the reset starting around that.
That's
time.
where I was going. Yep.
And see, so I know, so I'm one of those people that have lineage on both sides of my family, both parents, that go back a long way. And I think I know why. You have the discrepancy between that and the 1800 stuff and the orphan stuff. I think they gave us a new some people got lineages and some people didn't, and like in my families they did, but it wasn't the original lineages. So for example, in my mom's family, she and my uncle can go back to like England in the, let's say, 1500s, and on one side they came over in 1688, and that the 1688 brothers had descendants that came to Florida in Pasco County in 1830.
That's where I live.
And started a homestead. That's where my some of my roots on my mom's side is Pasco County. They were founders and they were homesteaders, and they showed up in 1830, the beginning of the Seminole Wars, and that time frame. To me, 1830 is like a red letter year in this reset.
Mm-hmm.
So that lineage showed up in Pasco County in 1830.
That's where I live now, Michelle. I live in Pasco County in Florida.
Yeah. I've got a lot of roots around Dade City in that area.
Henry Flagler was born in 1830 and Carnegie in 1835. So, yep. Seems to be a lot of 1830 dates as the people in this realm are being born, introduced during that time.
Yeah. So I'm identifying, so it's like 1800 to 1900 major time, 1810, 1830, 1850, 1870, 1890 were like initiatory years in that century. A lot of stuff going on at that time. And so I think they occulted the timeline. I think they had their own plan for how they were going to implement this new world order.
So where did they bury did they burying the dead's name is something new? Like, I mean, again, where would this guy have buried his father, his mother, his people? Because there's nothing before them. What did they do? Did they just throw on the ground and said, "See ya"? I mean,
again, I think that was all covered over, and I think the Freemasons, I think the Oddfellows, I think the Elks, I think the Woodmen of the World, I think the Knights of Pythias. I think there are a number of these little secret societies that were involved in the reset, and there's a lot of secret societies that have as their emblem shaking hands. And you can kind of identify them because they all have that same handshake going on in their logo. I think they were the ones that were doing the actual physical reset and coming up with the stories and clearing things out and making them livable again. Because even I've got a picture, Rob, of Pittsburgh. It was identified as Pittsburgh in the early 1900s, and it's being dug out. Wherever it was being dug out of, it was mud flooded. So exactly when and how this stuff all came about, I'm not really sure. But I would say, with regard to your cemetery question, Ken, they were something before, because I've seen them on Leylines, and then if you have large cemeteries in an area, I think say in large cities, they're pretty substantial structures. And they seem to be connected to the grid system. And I'm tracking an alignment now through Western Florida, which is absolutely fascinating. It's going between one of the pyramids at Teotihuacan in Mexico, and it's going to the Great Pyramid of Giza. I'm going right through Western Florida, and I'm learning things I had never knew about. And
does that connect to the Coral Castle at all, any chance?
Not that alignment. I mean, it could be. For sure, it could be. But I'm having my mind blown by what's showing up on this alignment. So I never knew about Florida Caverns, and that's in Mariana, in Florida, on its way into Georgia. I'm finding massive quail hunting plantations owned by people like Ted Turner and other people with money. As I'm going along this, that's in Georgia. All these other hunting plantations. I found the first nuclear site, the location of where nuclear materials were first developed in the 1950s by DuPont. And that's the Savannah River site. And that's in South Carolina, in Raleigh, South Carolina. That's on this alignment.
That's why I just moved from Savannah to back to Tampa. What about the Georgia Guidestones? Was there any ley lines associated with that?
I'm sure there was. I mean, that would have been put up by the cabal. I'm so glad they were destroyed, but I don't know if they took advantage of something that was already there, or not. I don't know. I don't give them that much credit.
Yep.
I think they can reverse engineer things. I think they can carve, but I'm not sure that they can do those precise alignments like the Guidestones had.
I have an opportunity to go to Quito, Ecuador. Is there anything in Quito, Ecuador that is of pertinence to this?
I'm sure there is. I mean, it would have been these cities, especially major cities, but all cities would have fallen on at least one alignment. And so, I just encourage people just to look at things with different eyes. And, if you're researching an area or walking around an area and just doesn't match, doesn't make sense. And it doesn't. That's the thing.
Real quick, Michelle, we have one question. And I feel like I know who it is. Were the Tatarians the Khazarians, and they came down and they, do you agree with that they were the Khazarian, or what do you feel like about the Tatarians?
The Tartarians were one of the original empires. So the Tartaria would have been in that part of the world where Khazaria is, which would be around where Ukraine is, which is why Ukraine's such a hot ticket these days. But the Tartarians were the original civilization, and the Tartarians got wiped out by these beings. And you can equate the Khazarians with the Nazis, and the usurping of the identity of the original civilization. And so the original people were real builders and creative and creating in love, and the controllers just came in and just they're masters of destruction and reverse engineering, and they're not, it's not coming from a good place at all. Wow. But no, they are in what was the original Tartaria, but they are not the Tartarians. Well, we don't know what is just out of our even realm of possibilities, because what we've been taught about our history is that we were highly advanced, and it wasn't that long ago. We were highly advanced, and that's the point that's been taken from us, because it's so unbelievable given what we've been taught about our world and ourselves. We think we're the most evolved and advanced that we've ever been, and we are far from it.
Wow. Well, this has been amazing. I have another show in 20 minutes. I was going to say, do you guys want to tell people where they can find you? Ken, they were trying to look for your YouTube channel in the chat.
You have to type in like the We Are One podcast, and then most of the videos don't even show up. You have to go to a video, and then you can go to subscribe or go to the channel, and then you can find the rest of the stuff. I haven't posted much lately. I've been kind of busy, but I've had Michelle and Chad and Rob talk on before. I've had Howdy Mikowski. I've had Ola Wolny. I mean, it's not a very big channel, but I enjoy talking to people who have something to talk about with me. And that's it.
Yeah. And thank you for coming on today, Ken. This was awesome. And Michelle, do you want to tell everybody how to find you? And thank you. This was great. I really enjoyed this. I think the audience really did too. Like, we've had about 90 people watching the whole time. So it's like, and everybody's really liked it, so thank you.
Well, thank you. And thank you everybody for sticking with us. My website is piercingtheveilofillusion.com. And then my YouTube channel is at Michelle Gibson 8946. And I encourage you, like I said, I can only just scratch the surface of the research that I've done. And everything I've said, I've got tons of research to back up, or I wouldn't say it. But having said that, what I really want people to take away is do your own research. Don't accept what you've been taught, and question the narrative.
For
And
sure.
don't take what any of us say for gospel. We're just out there doing that. Do your own research, and ask questions is the main thing. Don't blindly accept what you've been told or taught.
Michelle, how can I email you?
The
Michelle.gibson565@gmail.com.
website again, Monique asked her website. It's piercingtheveilofillusion.com, and I have it in the description.
Okay, great.
And Ken, send me your YouTube channel. I'll put it in the description. And thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. This was awesome. I love this.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys. All right. Have a good night, everybody. And I'll be back in 20 minutes. I have another guest coming on. They're going to do psychic readings. So whoever wants to tune in for that, you guys can tune in, and I'll see you guys in 20 minutes. And thank you, Michelle.